You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 AM, a CBS station.
Hello and welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. You are listening to us on CBS radio station 1580 AM in the Washington, D.C. area, or streaming on the web at WMClive.com. where you can also find links to podcasts of all our previous shows. And we want to hear from you, too, so tweet us at hashtag WMCLive or email us at womensmediacenterlive@gmail.com. Today, we continue celebrating Black History Month with 4 women of formidable intellect and warmth of heart. 2 have literally transformed academia. A third, younger, is deepening that transformation, and the trajectory of the 4th reaches from forging Black lesbian feminist theory and literature to now sitting in the City Council of Albany, New York. But first, we need to go inside the headlines. Sometimes I think irony is the one consistent thing in the universe. This was the New York Times story. On February 1st, 9 polio immunization workers were shot to death in northern Nigeria. The killings had eerie echoes of attacks that killed 9 female polio workers in Pakistan in December. Most of the Nigerian victims were also women. They were shot in the back of the head. No one immediately took responsibility, but suspicion fell on Boko Haram, a militant Islamist group. Polio, which once paralyzed millions of children, is now down to fewer than 1,000 known cases around the world and is endemic in only 3 countries: Nigeria, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. Nigeria had been improving, but there's a long history of Nigerian Muslims shunning the vaccine. 10 years ago, immunization was suspended for 11 months due to rumors that it caused AIDS or it was a Western plot to sterilize Muslim girls. That hiatus let cases spread across Africa. Dr. Heidi Larson, an anthropologist still working with the vaccination drive for UNICEF, said, "Even back then we were trying to calm rumors the CIA was involved." Superstition and America bashing, you think, even if at times the latter seems understandable, if not deserved. How tragic that they fly on rumors' wings to help paralyze and kill children. And then you remember. In its effort to track Osama bin Laden, the CIA paid a Pakistani doctor to seek entry to bin Laden's compound on the pretext of vaccinating the children, to get DNA samples as evidence that it was the right family. Subsequently, some Taliban factions in Pakistan outlawed vaccination in their areas and attacked vaccinators, the Pakistani attacks becoming a model for the Nigerian one. Larson now says, "Frankly, I can't go to people now and say the CIA isn't involved." Still, she adds, this won't deter us from getting everyone vaccinated to save the lives of the children. But we might well ask, how many more women health workers will be shot in the head for trying to save those lives in the face of rumor that turns out to be real? Our first guest, Bonnie Thornton Dill, is Dean in the College of Arts and Humanities at the University of Maryland and founding director for both the Consortium on Race, Gender, and Ethnicity at that university and the Center for Research on Women at the University of Memphis. President of the National Women's Studies Association until last year, she has authored 3 books. Welcome, Bonnie, to Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
You have spent much of your professional career exploring the ways in which economic opportunity and class position and race and gender intersect. You're one of the mothers of intersectionality, aren't you, that now has actually taken root in women's studies and in academia?
Well, I think that's fair to say. I certainly was one of the early people looking at what we then called the intersections of race, class, and gender. Mm-hmm. And younger scholars have kind of given it the label intersectionality, and that notion has now really moved globally, and it's being used in a lot of different ways.
About time.
Well, I think it's been very helpful in allowing us to look at difference and diversity among women, and the things that are shared and the things that are also different because of their race or their class or their sexuality or their ethnicity or nationality, and all of those various variations.
Yes. And there's a book that's either recently come out or is about to come out with some of your work on this in it?
Right, there is. It's a book. It's actually a collection that I co-edited with my colleague Ruth Zambrana. It's called Emerging Intersections, Race, Class, and Gender in Theory, Policy, and Practice, from Rutgers University Press.
You have also done extensive research, and I think it was your first book, I believe, on black women domestic workers.
Yes.
And I, of course, being a golden oldie, remember the first attempts to organize a union, which never was able to take root. I mean, a lot of opposition, obviously. And you were critical of the popular book, The Help. I never read the book, but the movie made me crazy, absolutely teeth gnashing, sentimentality and stereotypes combined, each of which I hate individually, and the combination of which makes me froth at the mouth. Tell us about that and the analysis that you have about that.
Oh, okay. Well, I actually, unlike you, I did not see the movie. I read the book.
Okay.
I couldn't bring myself to see the movie, although I understand some of the acting was very good, and I might look at it for those purposes.
When you're feeling strong.
Right.
Or have had stiff drinks.
Right. I mean, I think it told an interesting story, but the story that everybody got excited about was not the real story that I think was interesting. I think the story that was interesting was the story of the white women of privilege and how they were handling that privilege, and how they were in some ways shut off from the things that were happening, the changes that were happening in the world, the civil rights movement, all of these kinds of things, kind of living in this bubble, and the way in which someone who then begins to look at it through the lens of other women kind of changes her perspective and basically gets alienated from the group. So I really thought it was more of a story about one white woman's kind of growth and coming of awareness in terms of race relations and civil rights, and not, but of course, that is not how it is presented or how it is sold. There are places where the women kind of act out and are engaged, and they're very much a part of a community, but that gets lost in the sentimentality that characterizes the story.
Yeah.
So I thought it was an interesting chronicle, but as I said, it's a chronicle about kind of white women's growth and change, and really not so much. And the problem is that the black women become the pawns almost through which their growth occurs.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, they are there to provide an opportunity for the white women to have profound revelations about which makes me want to toss my cookies.
Yes, and you said that even more clearly than I.
Yeah.
You mentioned about organizing domestic workers. And there have been lots of efforts to do that. There has been really some success more recently. I mean, it's always going to be in some ways a hard field to organize, but people in New York State and then more nationally as a part of have been working on domestic workers' bills of rights and other things. And so it's still alive and very much being addressed by activist women today, and I think that's exciting.
That's so encouraging. That would change so much already, just in itself. Perception, reality, would also be good for the economy, I might add.
Right.
I want to skip now a little lateral leap into women's studies. You're the immediate past president of the National Women's Studies Association, and Bonnie, where is women's studies today? What would you say are the programs doing a better job in telling the stories that represent all of women's history or herstory? Are we better off than we were? Are we worse off? Are we sort of stalled and treading water? How would you characterize women's studies today?
Well, the field of women's studies has grown tremendously. There are a large number of women's studies programs around the country, and although some of them are small and have not as much support as they need, but they are on a lot of campuses. Mm-hmm. There are, I think, it's pretty, to a large extent, people feel that the idea of intersectionality, the idea of the diversity of women's lives has really become foundational in the field, and that you don't come out of women's studies without learning that now.
About time.
Yeah, and so to that extent, I think it's wonderful. I think women's studies students and women's studies scholars, to a large extent, are still about the work of changing the world and making women, giving women kind of fuller recognition and attention and addressing their issues more completely. At the same time, we've, as one of the articles in the last issue, I think, of Ms. Magazine said, we've only just begun.
That's true. I know.
And so there is still a lot of work to do. One of the challenges for women's studies programs in the academy is the push and the pressure in the academy for very academic, very theoretical, more theoretical work, less activist work. And although activist organizations are growing up everywhere, and there are increasing numbers of young feminists and young feminist activities and organizations on campuses. So I think it's a very vibrant. It's become a much more global, a much more racially diverse, a much more culturally diverse field.
But that's great
than it was, and that's good. In fact, among academic fields, women's studies is probably the one with the highest percentage of scholars of color and international scholars in the professorate.
This is really good news. You've made my day.
So that is good news. We still have a way. We're not where we need to be.
Of course not.
But we have made strides that other fields have not made, and I think it's important to acknowledge that.
Yay for us. And I'm sure a lot of those strides were made when you were president of the National Women's Studies Association. I suspect that you had something to do with this.
Well, there have been a number of people working on this for a while, and so we each kind of add our push, right. and all together we move farther along.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the work that you do, Bonnie. And thank you for being with us. We unfortunately have to go. It always frustrates me. Never enough time. But I thank you so much for being with us on Women's Media Center Live. And may we come back to you and check in again?
Oh, please do.
Thank you.
Please do. It's been my pleasure. Thank you, Robin.
We have to take a break here on Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I'll be right back with a dynamic feminist named in 2010 by Ebony Magazine one of America's top 30 black leaders under age 30. So don't go away. After Hurricane Sandy, parts of the East Coast have returned to normal, but others won't see normal again for quite some time. One group getting volunteers and aid supplies to those who need it is called Occupy Sandy. Made up of a coalition of Occupy Wall Street activists, community organizers, and technologists, Occupy Sandy is using social media and other software tools to identify and quickly respond to urgent needs among the hardest-hit communities. You can help. To donate or to volunteer, visit occupysandy.org.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 AM, a CBS station.
Welcome back. Our next guest is Salamishah Tillet, Assistant Professor of English and Gender, Sexuality, and Women's Studies at the University of Pennsylvania. She's also the creator of an award-winning multimedia performance on rape that tells her own story. Welcome, Salamishah, to Women's Media Center Live.
Hi, how are you? Happy to be here.
Well, it's good to have you here. You are bringing up the youth front, especially on this show, and so there's a number of things I want to ask you in terms of what's happening with young feminist or pre-feminist, because everybody, I assume, comes to this, women in the United States who are African American.
I'm now part of that generation that's, on the verge of no longer being considered a young adult. But as hip-hop generation, feminism, I think, has been redefined and redeployed for many of us who see ourselves as third-wave feminists or hip-hop feminists. But I'm a college professor, so on college campuses at the University of Pennsylvania and college campuses that I travel to with our organization, A Long Walk Home, I get to see how issues, particularly issues around gender-based violence, are really important to young women who identify as feminists, and they're engaging really creative and innovative ways to kind of tackle these issues. So they're both of their generation using social media or multimedia platforms to do so, but they're really building on prior generations of feminist activist work. And then with a Long Walk Home, not only do college programs, but we're really we have a program called Girlfriends that we think of as a feminist boot camp for teenage girls.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. You co-created it. This is an art-based feminist boot camp for.
Yeah, the whole organization is like art-based activism to end violence against girls and women, and so
that's great.
We have a college program called Story of a Rape Survivor SOARS, and we have a high school program called Girlfriends. And in both programs, we're empowering young people to change their communities, change their schools, and change their individual lives around issues of ending violence against girls and women. But with the teenage girls, we see a lot of excitement, because a lot of them, what's exciting about working with really young people is that they actually don't have the same kind of preconceptions of the word feminism, right? So they come in just kind of open to the idea of gender equality.
Interesting.
Because of their own experiences of their own lives. They can have a sense of what's right and what's wrong without having the kind of, unfortunately, sometimes the word feminism is loaded or burdened by, sexist ideology. And so they just come in and they get to embrace the word as they embody it, as they live it.
Oh.
So Girlfriends, Girlfriends
That's great.
does that. Yeah.
and you and your sister Scheherazade, you co-founded A Long Walk Home, which is also uses art therapy and visual and performing arts to address violence against girls and women. So you're all over the place.
Yeah, well, that's where through A Long Walk Home we do SOARS and we do Girlfriends. But we started the organization as when I was in grad school and she was in college, so we were really, really like baby feminists in the movement when we decided to create this organization, and it came about as a result of Scheherazade photo documenting my healing process as I recovered from rape. So I was raped in college twice, and Scheherazade, and I became an activist around those issues after I graduated, and Scheherazade, as my sister, but also as like a baby feminist, took her camera to follow me healing, and then we became more involved in the movement as a result of that very intimate experience.
Is that where that filming was that the beginning of SOARS? So, SOARS, for our listener, is Story of a Rape Survivor, which is an award-winning multimedia performance that, to correct me if I'm wrong, tells your own story of that sexual assault.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah.
Is that where it started? Aha.
That's where it started, yeah. Through her camera lens when she was a junior in college. So I think she was around, 19 years old. Yeah, so exactly. And then we built the organization from that very early kind of, attempt to help me heal or desire to help me heal with her camera. We built this national organization.
Wow.
And we really focused on working with young women because we were young women, but also there are so few resources for young people and yet at the same time they're the ones who are disproportionately likely to experience gender-based violence.
You and your sister give a whole new meaning, literal meaning to sisterhood is powerful. Very, very nice one. I find, and for everything that you're saying bears this out too, I find that the rumor, the myth that younger women are not interested in feminism to be completely specious. I mean, everywhere I go, I encounter young women who are royally pissed off for all the right reasons, and quite a few younger men too. And are active not always in recognizable ways, and the issues may be different, although many of them are exactly the same. But definitely active and furious and in movement.
No, I find that too, and it's across the board. Like I teach a lot of classes that explicitly deal with feminist authors or feminist themes. And, my classes are, oftentimes you have a lot of women, but you have a fair number of young men who are interested in taking on these issues, both as leaders, but also as collaborators and allies. So I tend to be optimistic about, even though there's obviously the fight needs to continue because patriarchy is quite dominant, I'm very excited about the coming generations of feminist activists. I think they're doing things already. They're going to continue to do great things, and there's a real investment in making sure that there's a safe and equal world for women.
Yeah, I confess that in terms of your own activism, I'm a special sucker for the combination in almost everything you do of politics and art. As an artist, as a writer, because I think that art goes places that rhetoric and leaflets just can't go. And when I learned that you were associate producer for for Aisha Shahida Simmons' No, a rape documentary, I got very excited because Aisha's been on the show, and it's no secret that I think it's an amazing work of art, of documentary, and of everything else. And so thank you for your work on that.
Thank you and Aisha for doing all the work that you've been doing.
Now, take a minute. We've only got a couple minutes left, but take a minute and talk a little bit about your own work, your own books, and I know that one is called Sites of Slavery, Citizenship, Racial Democracy, and the Post-Civil Rights Imagination. But the one you're working on now is about somebody who I have adored ever since I was about 11 and discovered her artwork, Nina Simone. Is it a biography? Is it an analysis of her work politically? What is it?
It's an analysis of her influence, those who influenced her and those she's influenced. So thinking about Nina Simone's music as a way of thinking about, to reimagine or to rethink about what the ideas of freedom and politics. Nina Simone's really intriguing to me because she did lie at the intersection of the Black Power movement, civil rights movement, and feminist movement. And so I think there's a nostalgia that my generation has for the 60s and the social movements, the ways in which activism and art and politics really were transformed at that period.
Yes.
So I look back to Nina Simone and moving forward to how she's influenced hip-hop artists, I think about how we can re-engage those ideas of freedom today.
Her Mississippi Goddamn, her version of Strange Fruit, just so many. And most of all, I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. And it's just, for me, we used to sing them in the civil rights movement, although we knew but we would sing them with her intonations, with what we thought were her intonations, because her versions of those songs were the definitive ones as far as we were concerned. And I saw her live playing many times. So I can't wait for this book to come out. That'll be very exciting. Thank you so much, Salamishah, for being with us on Women's Media Center Live and helping us celebrate Black History Month.
I'm so honored to be with you today. Thank you.
And now we have some serious news you can use. The latest HIV data from the Atlanta-based Centers for Disease Control and Prevention indicated that African American women accounted for nearly 30% of the estimated new HIV infections among all African Americans. And although that community represented only 14% of the U.S. population, blacks overall accounted for 44% of all new HIV infections. Additionally, the rate of new HIV infections among black women was 15 times that of European American women and over 3 times the rate among Hispanic or Latina women. 90% of all women with HIV are black, with the burden falling mainly on heterosexual women in the nation's capital. And the report also calls for routine HIV testing as part of comprehensive reproductive health care, and it calls for domestic violence screening and assistance that relates to HIV prevention with a threatening sexual partner. It calls on states to expand Medicaid so that poor women and women of color can get the HIV care that they need. But that expansion is under political threat. At least 6 Republican governors in Florida, Texas, Mississippi, Wisconsin, Louisiana, and South Carolina have said they'll opt out of the health care law's Medicaid expansion program. So the moral of the story is get tested and get active. We have to pause again briefly. This is Women's Media Center Live, and I still seem to be Robin Morgan. When we return, we'll be talking with an old friend from the activist trenches, a pioneering publisher of black feminist thought, who is now a pioneering city councilwoman.
Want to stay informed when there are changes to Social Security? Subscribe to receive automatic email updates on popular Social Security web pages with the click of a button. Just visit www.socialsecurity.gov/GOV delivery. More than 1 million people already receive updates to the pages they're most interested in. You can too. Look for the red envelope followed by a link that says Get Email Updates. To learn more, visit www.socialsecurity.gov/GOV delivery. Social Security delivers.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 AM, a CBS station.
And we're back with a scholar who was the first to define the field of black women's literature. The activist, author, black feminist political theorist and publisher, and, for the past 8 years, member of the City Council of Albany, New York, Barbara Smith. Welcome, Barbara. Welcome to Women's Media Center Live.
Thanks so much, Robin. I'm so happy to be with you.
Oh, it's like a reconnection with an old friend. I don't know. It must be, at least 20 years more, but more like 30 that we've known each other.
Yes.
It?
Oh, yes. We met back in the mid-20th century, around then.
It sounds like a long time ago. Well, there's so much to get to. I want to do a little bit on the past before we get to the present and the future, because your trajectory of activism is unique and I think really cool. Now you're a city councilwoman in Albany and doing, in effect, community organizing with some clout. But when I first got to know you, we were both young and fresh out of the civil rights movement, and you were the first, or one of the first, openly lesbian, radical, feminist activists and literary minds. I remember thinking, oh my God, she loves literature too. She writes. So I want to talk about, for a minute, you reorganized, we're talking 1975 here, the Boston chapter of the National Black Feminist Organization, and established what became famous and still is as the Combahee River Collective. And I think it's so interesting today when they talk about intersectionality, which is basically, I think, giving a name to what Barbara Smith was doing in the early 1970s.
Well, I don't know if I can take full credit for all of that, particularly the intersectionality part, which I think is more or less an academic perspective or an academic way of talking about what we did talk about back in the 70s, which is the intersection of race, class, gender, and sexual orientation identities, and to assert that they really meant something, and even more importantly, that we had a right to organize in response to the material conditions that our various identities created.
Exactly. Yeah. So you were doing it. It's just that later on, they gave a name to it in academia.
Yes. I think that's probably true, Robin.
Which is what academics do. They legitimize what organizers and activists have been doing for some time already. And then you established Kitchen Table Women of Color Press, which I think was the first, certainly was the highest profile, I believe the first U.S. publisher for women of color.
Yes, we generally refer to it as such, but there was at least one other woman of color press, the Third Woman Press, that had predated it, but that started as a periodical, and there was a focus upon Latina writers, although not exclusively. So I think that what Kitchen Table did was definitely to work for and gain a national and even international reputation and visibility, but also to be inclusive of all women of color. So yes, that was it. Really did make a paradigm shift.
And because you co-founded it with Audre Lorde and Shari Moraga, it really did include all kinds of women of color, and some of the list of books that you published were what has become many of the classics of third world feminism.
Right. Yes, that is certainly true. Particularly this bitch called My Back, Writings by Radical Women of Color, and then my own anthology, Homegirls, a Black Feminist anthology.
Yes, and because you're notoriously lazy and you weren't doing enough with all of this, you were...
Well, I hear that with President Obama. He's been accused of being lazy, too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, just lolling around, staring at the wall. So you weren't, and of course you were demonstrating and doing literal community organizing and street activism during all this, but you found time to write, and the anthology, the collection, all the women are white, all the blacks are men, but some of us are brave, Black Women Studies. That was, is, and always will be a classic. It's shorthanded in my mind as "but some of us were brave." It's the untold, and to this day still untold, largely, story of Black women in the civil rights movement.
Right, and Black women in the United States.
Yes.
We looked at, because we were trying to create the field of Black women studies, we talked to women and got submissions. We got submissions from various fields. So it wasn't just looking at the civil rights era and talking about the role of women. It was like looking at women, the history of women in the United States in a variety of fields. And it was the first book that actually laid out the premise that there was such a thing as Black women's studies and that there should be.
When you look back, I hope that you glow with pride over some of this, because do you realize how many firsts there are and how much you carved out new paths? Yes, I'm rather cognizant. And one of the things, Robin, and I hope that this comes across as how I wish it to, but one of the things is that at the time, I was also aware that it was breaking ground, because I knew that what did not exist, and I knew how important whatever it was that we were asserting and that we were bringing to our both political and intellectual dialogue. I knew that these were new concepts, new directions, and as I said, I was very aware at the time. I've always had a really sensitive historical sense of what's going on. So I think I knew it at the time. It's gratifying so many decades later that this work is still seen to be of value. You had heterosexism coming at you, homophobia, racism from the white women, sexism from the black men, the cost of running a press. I mean, it could tire a girl out. Yes, and it was tiring. Not as tiring as what I'm doing now, but yes, but it was certainly with great commitment, though, toward the results. We really wanted for women of color to have a voice, and as I said, not only did our books and other kinds of work, like our freedom organizing pamphlets, not only did they cover the country and get all over the United States, we also made some impact internationally, particularly in those countries where English was spoken. Well, what I love is also that you're still going strong. So let's talk about now. We've only got about 2-3 minutes left, but
Okay.
but you are the city councilwoman for the Albany, New York Common Council, which is the city council representing the 4th Ward. And you've done 2, at least, major initiatives while there. And you're in your second term?
Second term, 8th year. This is an
Wow.
election year.
So your constituents know that they've got a good thing going.
I hope so. I think that that's the way most of them feel. But, of course, you probably know the job of a city council member is really a lot of customer service.
Mm-hmm.
So it really is knowing when someone says, "There's this intersection needs a stop sign," or this traffic light broke, or my sidewalk is, I learned a phrase to say, there's a tripping hazard.
Ah.
If you say tripping hazard, they come out and fix it. So as I said, there's a lot of those basic day-to-day kinds of things. But as opposed to focusing a lot on legislation, what I've been able to do and what I wanted to do was to focus on 2 major issues that our city and many other places face, which is the issue of street violence and gun violence, and also the issue of getting a quality education for all of the children and young people who live in our community. So those have been my 2 major initiatives. We brought SNUG ceasefire. That was a state initiative. SNUG is gun spelled backwards. We brought that to Albany really in 2009, and we continue to try to keep it alive, and it is considered to be one of the best SNUG sites in the state, or at least one that conforms most to the model, which is the Chicago ceasefire model. And then I've been working to try to establish the Harlem Children's Zone model around education here in the city of Albany. So both those things have been major undertakings and have met with some success.
I hope that there will be a book from you about what it was like to serve on the city council. I think it's time, don't you think? A beginning of a memoir of this amazing trajectory?
Well, several people have mentioned this to me already, including Gloria Steinem.
Okay.
As you know, we all met each other around the same time in the 1970s.
That's right.
Yes, that has been suggested to me, and I definitely am taking it on advisement.
Because also you can write, and not all activists between you and me can.
Well, you know, my field is literature. That's what I went to graduate school to do, was to teach literature on the college level. So I've been immersed in it for many years, and it always tickles me when I find a typo in the New York Times, and also when I find a typo in our legislation sometimes. I'm often the person who says, "This is misspelled. You need to spell it correctly."
I know. Once you're an English major, always you're in it. Yeah,
yes, it is very helpful. It's a really useful skill.
You go through life with a blue pencil. You know.
Right.
Oh, Barbara, I wish there were more time, but I loved this conversation. And thank you for being with us on Women's Media Center Live and for everything you keep on doing.
You're very welcome.
And we now have a few items in the Surrealism Corner. And by the way, we need you to send in suggestions for the Surrealism Corner. Political things, clips, weird things. Remember, Women's Media Center Live at gmail.com. Share your surrealism. So there's just a few. These are little odd facts. 35% of the people who use personal ads for dating are already married. The moral of that story is be very alert. 2. Women blink nearly twice as much as men. I'm convinced that this is because in patriarchy, women look around them and cannot believe what they're seeing. 3. The electric chair was invented by a dentist. Somehow that's not surprising. And last, butterflies taste with their feet. I got nothing. I have no comment to make about that. Remember to send in some surrealism. Time for another pause. I'm Robin Morgan here with Women's Media Center Live. Don't budge from where you are, because we'll return in a minute with a towering figure in academia and a beacon for women, Johnnetta Cole.
If you ever need an organ transplant, you will probably die before you get one. Thousands of Americans die waiting every year. You can improve your odds by joining LifeSharers, and it's free. Visit lifesharers.org or call 888-ORGAN-88. LifeSharers puts organ donors first. When you join LifeSharers, you get preferred access to the organs of other members. This could literally save your life. Join LifeSharers today. There's no age limit. Parents can enroll their minor children, and no one is excluded due to any pre-existing medical condition. Call 888-ORGAN-88 or visit lifesharers.org. That's LIFESHARERS.org. Life Sharers. It's free. It could save your life.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 AM, a CBS station.
And we are back again, this time with Johnnetta Cole, director of the National Museum of African Art at the Smithsonian Institution. She previously was the first African-American woman to lead Atlanta's Spelman College, the oldest historically black women's university in the U.S. Welcome, Johnnetta, to Women's Media Center Live.
Sister Robin Morgan, I am absolutely thrilled to be on this program with you. Thank you for the invitation.
Oh, my dear, not as thrilled as we are to have you. I hardly know where to begin. Well, let's begin with where you are right now, and then we'll look back and forward. You've had this extraordinary, distinguished career as the first African-American woman to lead Spelman College.
First African-American woman, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Not the first woman.
No, I said the first African-American woman to lead Atlanta's Spelman.
There were two righteous white women who were the founders, in a sense, of Spelman, the first two presidents.
I hadn't known that. But it took something like, 170 years for a black woman to attain the post? 107, yeah.
Well, 107. And I think you and I both know why it took so long.
Yeah, we have a clue. I think we're pretty sure why. And now, here you are, perfectly made for you, because your basic field was anthropology and African societies and art. Am I correct?
You are correct that my graduate degrees are in anthropology with a focus on African studies. But Robin, as you know, for most of my professional life, one discipline never seemed to be enough. And so I've also done a lot of work in the field that we call African American studies and a lot of work in women's studies.
You bet. Let's talk for a minute about the National Museum of African Art, of which you are the director now, and which seems ready-made for you.
The National Museum of African Art is a very special place for me to be. First of all, Robin, because it is the only museum in the entire Smithsonian system of 19 museums, a national zoo, 9 research centers. It's the only museum that is focused on the visual arts of the one place on earth from which we have all descended.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Africa is the cradle of humanity.
It's the mother.
And in this period of time, when there seems to be so much divisiveness, so much division among the people of the world, I find it totally encouraging and inspiring to be in a place that really is about one of our commonalities, one of the things that we all share. It doesn't matter what so-called race, what gender we are, what sexual orientation, what age, what ability or disability we have. So if you're sensing that I am excited about being there, you are absolutely right.
Yeah, a little bit. I was sensing that. It's true. Whenever I go to the National Natural History Museum here in New York, I stand before the exhibition of mock-ups of Lucy, the mother of everybody, and I never cease to cry. First of all, she was little. She was short like me, and I identify with Lucy.
And so there's a special connection.
There's a connection, but she was the mother.
There's something else, too, and it's this, Robin. You know that my professional life has been, as what I would call, being a, shall I say, an intellectual who is interested in speaking to and working with the public. So we call that a public intellectual.
Correct.
I think museums are perfect places for public intellectuals.
Love it.
It means we have to break it down. We have to help our visitors to understand incredibly complex and sometimes contradictory things that are going on in the exhibitions. So I'm still in the education business, is what I'm saying.
Of course you are.
And of course, I will forever define myself as a social activist in the sense that I really think I've got to play some role with everybody else in helping to get this world right side up again,
yes,
as Sojourner Truth would put it.
Yes, indeed. And in all of those roles that you play, very gracefully segueing from one into the other or doing them simultaneously, help educate us too, the rest of our listeners and myself. Where would you say women in general, and in particular African American women, how far have we come, if at all? Where are we in academia, in the society at large? Because as we know, there's always this simplistic rush to declare any struggle over. There's a black president, so now there's no racism. There's women Secretary of State, so now there's no sexism. All of which is baloney. But what would you say?
Well, I really struggle to find language that is not trite, because what is often said is the reality. We have made progress.
Yes.
But do we have a mighty long way to go?
Oh, God, yes.
Now, what is helpful, I think, about owning the progress is that it's encouraging to us. It makes us understand that these isms, that these things are not carried on the chromosome, that these isms are learned, and that through education and fundamentally, of course, through legislation, we can make changes. Are we making them fast enough, substantially enough? Clearly, in my view, the answer is no.
Yeah. If you had to say one or two areas where you could recommend particular ways of moving ahead, what would they be?
Because I'm an educator, it will not surprise you what I'm going to say, namely, that we really have an enormous opportunity to teach around the issues that continue to haunt us.
Yes.
Racism, sexism, heterosexism.
Yep.
And when we do that effectively, we are a part of a movement. Education alone will not do it. I am not naive enough to think if we did our best in every classroom, beginning from pre-K all the way up through, we would be done with this. I understand the nature of power, and that it, as Frederick Douglass, that great abolitionist and feminist, said, power concedes nothing without a struggle.
Right.
So it takes more than education, but it will not happen without education.
It's central.
So I guess I would summarize my position, Robin, by saying I see education as a necessary but not a sufficient condition for advancing the movement for full equality for women, for people of color, and for all who have been put on the margins.
Yes.
Of societies around the world.
And one last thing, we've only got a minute or so left, but one of the many things that I love about you is that you continually hit like a signature chord the refrain of the importance of art and culture. Sometimes governments are reluctant to fund that. Sometimes it's represented as if it were somehow, unnecessary. And of course, it's as necessary to me. But then I'm an artist as air. But leave us with some words that will remind us not just what we're fighting against, but what we're fighting for.
Let me tell a very quick story.
Yes.
A woman in her museum is making the pitch to a very wealthy man to help fund a children's exhibition. And he says, "Oh, lady, please. I'm interested in fundamental things like education and health and housing and those things. That's what children need." She replied, "Sir, I care just as you do about those rights that our children should have. But they also have the right to have joy."
Oh.
That's what art can do for us.
That's right.
It can bring us joy. And sometimes the joy comes with pain.
Yes.
As we have to look at the realities that some artists so forcibly insist that we look at.
Mm-hmm.
But because we will look, because we have the possibility of changing what we're looking at, we ought to feel joy.
Thank you so much for being with us, Johnnetta. There's nobody like you. I'm so glad
I can say back at you, nobody like you as well. Stay really, really on the path, and I hope to see you soon, Robin.
I hope so, too. Thank you so much. And now it's time for Fighting Words. Among the Padwang tribes in Burma's Kaya state, there's a custom of pressing down a girl's collarbones with brass rings. The ritual of so-called beautification begins when the child is 5 years old, one ring at a time added during intervals until, as an adult, she may be wearing as many as 20 rings in a tight necklace. Tourists call the wearers giraffe women because of the grossly elongated necks. In fact, the neck muscles tend to atrophy. Removal of the rings can cause suffocation. Padwang men take pride in the thin, high voices of Padwang women, calling the sound inherently feminine. I wrote about Padwang women in The Word of a Woman, a collection of my essays, in a piece called The Politics of Silence. Of course, I didn't quote every famous male supremacist in history on silence, although I was aware of Aristotle's having sniffed "silence is a woman's glory," and I was aware that as late as the 19th century, it was argued that if women spoke in public, our uteruses would dry up. What I didn't know until recently, reading an article by Anna Karpf in the February 1st issue of The Guardian, was that the invention of the megaphone and microphone not only did not level the playing field, but evoked even more misogyny. In 1927, Bell Labs announced the following: "The speech characteristics of women, when changed to electrical impulses, do not blend with the electrical characteristics of our present-day radio equipment." It was women's fault, you understand, not the equipment's. Women's voices in early broadcasting were considered shrill and were compared to the filing of steel. They were dismissed as too monotonous, yet too dramatic, had too much personality or too little, were too cold or were unable to sound impersonal. The few who did manage to get on radio were cultural figures like Virginia Woolf, but the authoritative voice that listeners supposedly demanded in newsreaders could not, ever, it was predicted, be female. As late as the 1980s, contemporary feminists were told that it would be 50 years before a woman would be anchoring the network evening news, since no woman had a sufficiently commanding presence. Well, check that one off the list. These days, in Britain, to be taken seriously, women apparently try to sound as sonorous as men, especially on the holy BBC. Nor is the U.S. that different, even in progressive media. When National Public Radio had its first 3 prominent female broadcasters, resentful male colleagues dubbed them the Fallopian Troika. And right now, in 2013, 22% of the local radio news force are women, and only 13% of the most important radio talk show hosts are women. That's one modern Western version of the Padwang rings. After a lifetime of ongoing activism, it somehow never occurred to me that simply sitting here, talking to you, was a revolutionary act. But it is. And so is your listening. And that's it for this week. You've been listening to us on CBS station 1580 AM radio in Washington, D.C., and on the web at WMCLive.com, which also has podcasts of previous shows. Remember, you're going to email us at womensmediacenterlive@gmail.com. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Views expressed here do not represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. WMC President and for this program Executive Producer Julie Burton, Senior Producer Crystal Williams-Chancellor, Technical Director Michelle Kinsey-Bruns, Production Assistant Nora Eakin, and our founding sponsor Regina Kulik-Scully. I'm Robin Morgan. Next week the show is devoted to Makers, the women who make America. That's both a PBS documentary airing February 26th and an interactive digital platform, Makers.com, with a wealth of video interviews of those who made and make the U.S. women's movement. It's a first. Join us on Women's Media Center Live.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 AM, a CBS station.